Cars that are sitting for months and months on dealer lots can come with large discounts that can save you a ton of money. Who doesn't like to upgrade their ride without emptying their wallet? Especially for high value sports and supercars, the benefit can ramp up quickly up to the point that it covers almost the first year of depreciation. But which cars offer these kind of discounts? Let's first dive a little bit deeper into it. The time that a car is listed for sale tells something about the scarcity level of that car. If a seller has a lot of cars that aren't selling, the seller will, generally speaking, reduce prices, as the idea is that this helps to attract buyers. If the seller discounts the cars enough, the cars will start to sell. This of course also works the other way around. Remember when the C8 Corvette launched? It was one of the fastest selling cars in the US. Unsurprisingly, sellers added massive price premiums. The scarcity level was high, since demand was above supply. Now we can identify these cars that aren't selling by looking at the carried over inventory. That metric shows the percentage of cars that are for sale for 3 months or longer. If we look at that metric for the cars for which I'm tracking the prices, we can see that, on average, 30% of the cars during last year weren't sold within 3 months. There are, however, big differences. Some models sold extremely quickly while others were close to impossible to sell. A handful of models had a carried over inventory rate between 60 and 70%, meaning that 60 to 70% of the cars were not sold within 3 months. Naturally, it is the area on the right hand side of the average in which, in theory, you can get the best deals, right? After all, if 70% of the inventory isn't sold within 3 months, surely the seller is willing to give you a good deal. Well, not always. The situation is more nuanced than that. It depends, for example, on the type of car you're looking at, the type of dealer, but also the time of the year. If we split the average carried over inventory during last year by brand, we can see that there are big differences between the brands. The sports cars of Mazda and Lexus sell relatively quickly at rates of 14 to 21%, while Acuras and Maseratis sell relatively slowly at rates of 45 to 50%. Moreover, the black lines show the confidence interval of the displayed rates, in other words, the uncertainty. The longer the black bar, the more variation over time and between the various models. Now if we take a look at Ferrari, we can see that the unsold rate is relatively high, right? But this of course doesn't mean that you can get the best deals on a Ferrari. It's driven by other factors. We can say, for example, with a high statistical confidence level, that more expensive cars have a higher carried over inventory percentage. This also follows from common sense, right? A Ferrari 488, generally speaking, takes longer to sell than an MX-5. Moreover, high-end dealers might have different financing arrangements for their stock or work with consignments. Of course, there are always exceptions to the rule. GT3s, for example, tend to sell relatively quickly despite their high price tag. We need to add something to this graph to help us interpret the relevance of the carried over inventory rate. The discount rates on unsold cars. In orange you can see now the discount rate for the carried over inventory. That is, the percentage by which car values are reduced if they didn't sell within 3 months. The values for this are displayed in percentages on the axis on the right. Now looking at these values, we can see that they tend to be higher for cars with a lower carried over inventory percentage. This makes sense, right? But how on earth do you use this information as a buyer to spot the best deals? To start, you can look at the cars that aren't selling quickly and get discounted a lot if they don't sell within 3 months, meaning that the orange and blue bars are close to each other in the right hand side of the graph. Unsurprisingly, we find Maserati and Aston Martin over here. These results are mainly built up by the MC20 and V8 Vantage market. If you follow my channel, you know that prices have been plummeting in those segments. Vantages are down by 14.5% compared to last year, and MC20s by 25%. So if you're shopping in these segments, you should be able to get a hefty discount on the price. If the seller doesn't budge, just walk out. These cars are selling slowly, and as the data shows, the price will most likely be reduced in the upcoming period. Another way to find deals is to look at the cars that are selling quickly and have a high discount percentage, meaning that the gap between the blue and the orange bars is positive. Over here we find the Nissans, which are made up by the 400Z, Mazda, so the Miatas, and Chevrolet, meaning the Corvette C8s. What's going on in these markets? Looking at the 400Z market for the base model, we can see that prices were above MSRP but have been trending down rapidly. The premiums in this market were not sustainable. Currently, the median price is $53,000 versus $70,900 in April of last year. Unsurprisingly, when we look at the carried over inventory in the left hand side graph, we can see that it almost doubled between July and April. In other words, the scarcity level decreased. As displayed in the graph on the right hand side, discounts for unsold cars decreased slightly from 10% in July, but are still very low. A similar situation applies to the Chevrolet market, or in this case the Corvette C8 market. Cars were selling way above MSRP and prices plummeted when supply increased. Now when it comes to the Mazda market, represented by the Miatas, we can see for example that especially the ND generation sells rapidly, but also is discounted a lot if they are hanging around. The NC and NB generations tend to sell a bit slower. So what can you do with this information? Well, for all of these markets with a low carried over inventory rate but a high discount percentage, it can pay off to pay close attention to the specific car you're interested in. If it has been sitting around for let's say 5 months, you know that it is above the average and that there's a good chance that there's some wiggle room in the price. So instead of waiting for the price to drop, it could pay off to simply talk to the seller. Now if we go back to the overview, we can see that there's a clear outlier in the graph, the Acuras, or to be more precise, the base NSXs. Type S's are excluded. We can see that they are not selling, but that sellers are also not decreasing the prices. What's going on here? It could mean that sellers are simply stubborn. They rather sell for top dollar than shift inventory. This would mean that they need to be confident that they can actually sell it for a high price. Second, it could mean that transaction prices are far below listing prices. Looking at the development over time for the two metrics, we can see that sellers might have a reason to be confident. Carried over inventory rates decreased during last year, meaning that cars sold quicker and quicker, while the discount rates changed from 3 to 5%. Overall, the Acura NSX based market is then also holding up quite well. You can check out my detailed market update if you want to know more. Now as a buyer you could wonder if this divergence over here means that prices will flatline soon and potentially exploit this. In these cases it's then also key to understand how the trends are developing over time. Now all the cases that we discussed so far refer to markets in which prices are falling, or in the case of the Acura, potentially move towards stability. The aim in these kind of situations is then also to get a price discount that compensates for your first year of depreciation. The holy grail is of course to get a good deal in a strong market, but alas, this is also very difficult. In these markets, inventory moves rather quickly and unsold inventory gets hardly discounted. If we zoom into the Porsche market and look at the breakdown by model, we can see very clearly what the strong and weak markets are. Taycans are selling relatively slowly compared to other models, but receive the highest discounts if they don't sell. The 911 market, on the other hand, is much stronger. Yes, the cars are selling as slowly as the Taycans, but prices aren't reduced. Sellers have a high confidence in the market. Also, the Cayman market looks relatively strong. They sell much quicker than 911s, while price reductions are fairly similar. If you want to buy in this market, you need to exploit the seasonality. You see, in these strong markets, list prices for new stock are not always lower during the winter. Yet, cars that aren't selling are discounted slightly more. If we look at the discount rates for the 991 and 992 Carreras, you can see that the unsold cars typically get reduced more during the winter. Last January this was 5% for the 991s and 4% for the 992s. Currently the rates are 4% and 3% respectively. In both cases it represents a clear difference from the summer, while the price trends didn't display a significant winter dip. You can see this in the detailed market update video. The rates during this winter though are less negative. This is driven by a generally stronger market. If we look at the development in the carried over inventory, we can see that it decreased by almost 50% during 2023. Again, this is reflected in the strong prices. Let's summarize what we saw. If a car is for sale for a long time, it doesn't always mean that there's a good deal to be had. It depends among others on a specific model, the price point, the price strength, the dealer, and the time of the year. In a normal situation where car prices are decreasing, there are a few strategies you can use to get a stellar deal and compensate some of their depreciation. In the upper segments, we saw that discounts can be had in markets with a high carried over inventory rate, combined with high price reductions on unsold inventory. The Maserati and to a lesser extent Aston Martin markets are examples of this. Of course, it's very unlikely that you would get a discount that no other customer would get. Yet, you should be aware that paying full price in these type of markets is costly. If the seller won't budge, walking away could be a profitable strategy in this segment. Now when it comes to the markets with a low carried over inventory rate but high discount percentage, it can pay off to pay close attention to the specific car you're interested in. If it has been sitting around for a while, you know that there's a good chance that there's some wiggle room in the price. Instead of waiting for the price to drop, it could pay off to simply talk to the seller. We also looked at a strange situation in which cars aren't selling, but also not getting discounted. You could get a good deal as the market is gaining strength, but also end up overpaying. Doing market research to understand the price trend and drivers is key here. Now when it comes to the strong markets, it's of course very difficult to find extraordinary deals. Prices themselves hardly display any winter dips, but price changes for unsold inventory do. You should then also look for cars that have been for sale longer than average and are still for sale in the winter. And with that we arrived at the end of this analysis. Now this is the first time that I devoted a full video to the inventory dynamics, so naturally there are still some points where the analysis can be improved. Please let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Someone suggested, for example, to look into the cars with the highest winter discounts. And I think this would be a valuable addition to the next update. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.